أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبعد. شرطها الاستقبال طهر الخبث ستر عورات وطهر الحدث بالذكر والقدرة في غير الأخير تفريع ناسها وعاجز كثير ندبا يعيدان بوقت كالخطأ في قبلة لا عجزها أو الغطاء وما عدا وجه وكف الحرة يجب ستره كما في العورة لكن لدى كشف صدر أو شعر أو طرف تعيد في الوقت المقر شرط وجوبها النقى من الدم بقصة أو الجفوف فاعلمي فلا قضى أيامه ثم دخول وقت فأدها به حتما أقول. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبعد. From today's lesson from the Murshid Mu'in, the Shaykh Abdul Wahid ibn ʿāshir rahimahullah ta'ala, we read about the shurut of the salat, the prerequisites or preconditions of the validity of the salat. Again, a reminder, what is a shart? A shart is similar to rukn or a wajib of a composite act. It is the constituent part of a composite act which is similar to a rukn in the sense that if you do it, the act is valid. If you don't do it, the act is invalid. But the subtle difference between a shart and between a rukn or a wajib, both of them being synonyms in this particular context, is that the rukn or wajib is part of the act, whereas the shart is external to it. It precedes it. So a shart of salat is tahara, purification. If you don't have wudu, your salat is not valid. However, for example, making 2 sajdas in every raka'ah, or the prerequisite number of raka'at, or the correct order of the wajibat of the salat, all of these things themselves are wajib, and they're actually part of the salat itself. So the first shart he mentions is istiqbalu, facing the Qiblah. And in the Mālikī school, facing the Qiblah is simultaneously very lenient and open and simultaneously very strict. It is strict in the sense that every person is obliged to face the Qiblah as best as they are able to. Even a slight deviation which is intentional from the Qiblah invalidates the prayer. So much so to the point where the mas'ala is mentioned in the Shuruhat of Khalil, that if a person intends to deviate from the Qiblah slightly, then after the salat is over, they realized actually what their intended deviation was exactly dead on, straight in the most precise direction of the Qiblah. Even then the person's prayer is invalid because of the mere intention of not facing the Qiblah. However, that being said, if a person were to make a mistake in the Qiblah, then there's great leniency. And we'll talk about that shortly. So the first prerequisite, the first shart he mentions is the istiqbal al-qibla. The second is tuhr al-khabath, which is the absence of physical impurity on a person's body, on a person's clothing, and in the physical place where a person will contact the ground where they are praying. So the absence of najasa in those 3 places, on the body, on the clothing, and on the physical place where a person touches when they pray from the ground. Wa tuhr al-hadath. And then the third prerequisite he mentioned is the state of ritual purity, meaning you should be in wudu. You cannot be in hadath, which is minor ritual impurity, or khabath, which is major ritual impurity. You have to be in the state of tahara, which can either be affected through wudu in general or in specific when there are certain conditions that a person meets, like not being able to use water or not having access to water, tayammum. So a person has to be in the state of ritual purity. I want people to recognize the difference between these two things. That a person can have wudu but have najis on their clothes or on their body or in the place that they're praying, but they're still in wudu. People have these kind of weird questions like, Shaykh, if I touch something that's najis, do I lose wudu? No, you don't. The things that cause you to lose wudu, you can go back and review those lessons. There are a specific set of things, and touching najis is not one of them in most cases. You touch najis, which is like, your spouse's like sexual fluid on their body, then that will, with intention of amorous contact, that will cause your wudu to break. But just touching najis doesn't cause your wudu to break. I get all kind of weird questions. Someone asked, like, if I see the awrah of another man, I heard that breaks your wudu. It doesn't break your wudu, but it is totally gay. So don't do it. But yeah, the things that break your wudu, if you want to know what they are, they're listed in full. Not everything haram or everything najis breaks your wudu. Separate. One is the state of ritual purity. It's a ritual state that a person is in, which is generally divorced from whether you have impurity on you or not. And then the other is, do you have impurity on your body, on your clothing, or in the place that you're praying? A person can have wudu but have impurity on their clothing, on their body, or in the place that they're praying. Or they can be their body can be free of najis, and their body can be free of their clothes can be free of najis, and their place they're praying can be free of najis. They just don't have wudu though. So it's important to separate those. And then Sahib al-Akhdari, he mentions two others that are not in this nazm, which is the freedom from speaking and the freedom, like being silent, and the freedom from amal kathir, from any physical action that is excessive. And this is the tafsir of حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين, that guard your prayers, and in particular guard your middle prayer, which, as we mentioned in one of the previous darses, according to Malik, was the subh prayer, because the middle prayer between the two prayers of the day and the two prayers of the night, and for a number of other reasons. And interestingly, it's the one that I think people blow off most often, at least in the age we live in. But tafsir is known by things other than anecdotal observation. So we'll leave that for a different time in a different place. But Allāh Ta'ālā says, guard your prayers in the prayer, in particular the middle prayer, and stand in front of Allāh Ta'ālā in a state of qunut. And qunut generally in the context of the prayer means like a special dua that's made within the prayer. But the linguistical meaning of qunut, that's like a special technical meaning of qunut in a particular context. The linguistical meanings of qunut are what? Silence, stillness, and obedience. And so this is part of what makes your prayer your prayer. Remember, the opening Allahu Akbar in the prayer is the takbiratul ihram. Ihram is like the state you enter into before you go to Hajj. It's also the state you enter into before you pray. Like a fast, you make an intention and then you make certain things that were permissible for you before, haram for you during the duration of the fast, as a sign that you are in a state of obedience to Allah Ta'ala, in a state of worship of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And likewise, the prayer also, the opening Allahu Akbar, the takbiratul ihram, is the same thing. That you are voluntarily foregoing those things that are permissible, not only from the fast, but other things as well. So everything that breaks a fast in general will break the prayer. If you eat, if you drink, if you have sexual relations, these things will break the prayer. And hopefully that's known to people. And so, but then there's more in the salat, which includes speaking, and it includes excessive movement. Why do we say excessive movement? Because a person is going to move around a little bit, and they can't like fully paralyze themselves to motions external to the salat. So Allah, from His rahmah, excuses little things, but excessive movement also breaks the prayer. So these two shurut that Akhdari mentions that are not here in Ibn ʿāshir right here. They are in line with وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Because what is qunut? Qunut is stillness, silence, and obedience. Obedience. So that you do the things that Allah commands you with regards to recitations, standing, ruku, or sujood, tashahud, etc. And you for all other things other than that, you're still from doing those things, and you're silent from saying those things. And then he mentions بالذكر والقدرة في غير الأخير. So other than this last thing, which is the state of ritual purity, the ritual state, other than that, these other prerequisites are themselves conditioned on the ability to do so with regards to two things. One is dhikr, that you remember to do them, or that you're aware that you're not doing them. So for example, facing the Qiblah or not facing the Qiblah, that you remember to face it, or that you're, if you're not facing it, that you're aware you're not facing it so you can adjust yourself. And then qudra means the ability to do something. So both of them are a type of qudra, they're a type of ability. One is a physical ability, the other is a mental ability. So the mental ability requires that you remember what it is that you need to do and you don't forget it. The physical ability requires that you're physically able to do so, which means that you're physically able to face the Qiblah. If a person is doesn't know what the Qiblah is from a place and they don't have the ability to figure that out before the Salat time is over, then they do their best guess. That can be your own best guess. That can be, there's someone really smart who you trust, who's with you, and you follow them. And like, if you don't trust them more than you trust yourself, you're not allowed to follow them. You're supposed to make your own best guess. But your own best guess, again, can be that like you trust such and such person and you follow them. But you have to make your best attempt to face the Qiblah. But if you're not able to, then we'll talk about that shortly. Same thing with najasa on your clothing. That you have to be aware, that you're required, if you're aware something's impure on your clothing or on your body or in the place you're praying, you're required to clean it or to pray in something else or do something about it. Whereas if you didn't know, or you knew and you forgot, then that's waived. Likewise, if a person, for example, only has clothing that has najis on it, then they only have a place that has najasa in it to pray, or they only have, they have nothing to wash the najasa off of their body, or all those things were there and they just didn't know that it was there or whatever. In any of those cases, then the condition of being free of ritual impurity in your body, in your clothing, and in the place you're praying is then waived. Then satrul awra, covering your nakedness, which I think we skipped over, which is a fourth prerequisite, the covering your nakedness. Likewise, so for example, a person may have a hole in their clothes and they're not aware of it, and they prayed and they weren't aware of it. Or they have a hole in their clothes and they don't have anything to cover it up with. Wal-'iyadhu billah, there have been people who have no clothes to pray. This is, poverty. It's part of poverty nowadays. There's like a ubiquity of textiles and clothing that people can even get things to wear out of the garbage now. It wasn't always the case. And poverty used to mean not having clothes to wear. In Mauritania, that's what some of the old mashayikh, they mentioned that. They said that kids, people couldn't afford clothes for even grown-ups. So kids oftentimes would just run around naked until they're 7 or 8. And it was just very normal because they didn't have clothes for them. And this is one of the descriptions of Jannah, in fact. لَكَ أَلَّا تَجُوعَ فِيهَا وَلَا تَعْرَى. That, one of the benefits of Jannah for the one who enters for paradise is that you won't be hungry therein, nor will you ever go naked. You will ever go without clothing. And that's a whole separate discussion that now we have a civilization. I think I use the word civilization also very loosely and almost somewhat sarcastically, but we have a civilization that doesn't value wearing clothes, that considers clothing to be a type of oppression, and considers nakedness to be a type of liberation. And it's not oppression versus liberation. Oppression and liberation have to do with something else. But what it is a person who likes their humanity or dislikes their humanity. Because people, their theory is, some of them, their theory is that humans are descended from apes. We don't believe that, but you know, ala wajh al-insaf, if we want to be fair, we should also see that we understand where they're coming from, because some human beings do like to act like apes, and some people hearken and yearn for that, you know, like a man who insists that he was born in the body of a woman, or vice versa. That some people, they don't want to be human beings, they want to act like apes. They see an ape walk over and pick up feces and eat it, and they're like, why can't I do that? They see an ape walk over and, you know, do all sorts of other debauchery and weirdness. Like, why can't I do that? And so, you know, anyway, that's a completely separate issue. But the satrul awra, there are, you know, the point is, if you find yourself, God forbid, in a situation where you don't have clothing to wear, then because you don't have it in therefore you're not able to wear it, and if you're not able to wear it, the condition is waived. Likewise, again, if, like the other example we gave, if a person has like a hole in their clothing, or perhaps a person, when they make ruku or sajda, you know, some part of their back is showing because their shirt is too short or shorter than they expected, or they were unaware that it was being exposed. It doesn't necessarily invalidate the prayer unless you know that that's going to happen. Obviously, that's a separate discussion. In the Mālikī school, right, people say this, they're like, well, you know, I don't think you guys should pray, or I don't think you guys should dress like you're foreigners from a foreign country. This is America, and this is American Islam. Okay. You know, in the sense that Islam doesn't mandate people dress like a Pakistani or like a Khaliji Arab or like an Iraqi or a Syrian or a particular type of people. I get what you're saying. However, what I would say is that the clothing, ma yuhaddidul awra, the thing that describes or defines the shape of the awra, that's already makruh. So pants and a shirt, right off the bat, it's already makruh. Allah rewards a person for not wearing pants and a shirt. And if you look at the traditional Muslim cultures, it's not like Muslims didn't have pants. They have pants in Turkey, right? It's not like Muslims didn't have shirts. But look at the shirts. The shirts of the people in Pakistan, they're long. They cover the awra. They go down to the knees. Look at the pants in Turkey that they wear, or the pants, for example, in Central Asia that we inherited in the Indian subcontinent. The crotch is much lower and it's wider. It doesn't define that the pants don't fit above the knees. You know, there are some places in the subcontinent where they have that. They call it pajama. We don't wear Punjabis. We don't wear that. Actually OG Punjabis wear a lungi, which is actually the sunnah. They wear the izar, which is actually a sunnah. And then, like, you know, those that don't, they wear the sirwal that's not fitted. But like, for example, in places like Hyderabad or Lucknow, where they wear the fitted pants, in that case, they always wear it with a qamis that covers down to the knees. And even then, it's kind of like, when a man wears it, it's a little bit, it's not the manliest thing, it's not considered the manliest thing in the world to wear. At any rate, so yeah, great. Don't want to dress like an Arab? Good for you. Don't want to dress like a Paki or whatever? Good for you. But don't claim that this dress is in its normal form, like culturally currently out there. That is something that is okay in the Sharia. It can be okay though. So if you want to dress like, you know, the coal miner's daughter that you are, then you can wear certain dresses. Or if you want to wear jeans, I'm not going to say no. It's, I guess, informal, but like, you know, you don't have to be wearing formal clothing to pray. Wear pants that are not super fitted and tight. Wear pants that are much looser than the ones that people wear. Just put a belt on. And wear shirts that are longer than people have on. And it will look a little bit different, but the Prophet ﷺ looked different than his people. Anyone who tells you otherwise is completely either lying or doesn't really know anything about hadith. Forget about the sunnah. Knowing something about the sunnah is far off. Even cherry picking hadith, you can't really cherry pick hadith and make a argument for that with a straight face. And the salat is something that you do 5 times a day, so in general, you should dress for salat. Just like a woman who is mining coal is not going to wear a wedding dress to work. Just like a man who is mining coal is not going to wear a tuxedo to work. but is more likely to put on tough boots and tough gear and clothing that can take a lot of abuse. A tradesman will wear pants that have a bunch of pockets in them so that they can keep their measuring tape hanging off their belt and their hammer and tools and things like that. Just like that, a person who's going to pray should dress in such a way that they can pray. And then once you prayed Isha and you're at home and just it's you and your missus, or if there's any sisters watching, you and your husband or whatever, then that's fine, that's okay. But when you're out and about during the day, there's a certain way Muslim dresses. An American can dress like that, but it's going to involve a little bit of modification from the way people dress right now as well. And yes, this is true, you don't have to dress like a Paki if you don't want to. Alhamdulillah, I like to dress like that because I am a Paki. Haha. Right? But I also don't mind wearing other clothing as well from time to time when things call for it. People go to you have a job interview at for manager at a restaurant or something like that. You should dress in a way that's appropriate for that. You don't have to put on your turban and jubbah and things like that for it. That's a funny story. Sometimes if you're really good at what you do, you can get away with things like that. But if you need the job, it's okay. You can, dressing there are some people who act like dressing other than from one of the Eastern cultures is somehow a sign of your impiety, and because of that they miss a lot of khair. But then there are some people who somehow act like that's what's wrong with Islam in America, and they miss a lot of khair as well. The truth is that you learn the fiqh, and then you as long as you stick to the usul, the furu', there's a lot of flexibility in them. If you stick to the principles, the actual modalities, there's a lot of flexibility in them. So he says, بِالذِّكْرِ وَالْقُدْرَةِ فِي غَيْرِ الْأَخِيرِ تَفْرِيعُ نَاسِهَا وَعَاجِزٍ كَثِيرٍ. So these three preconditions, with the exception of the fourth, which is being free from najis on your person, clothes, and place, and facing the Qiblah, and covering your nakedness. These three are conditioned themselves with being aware of them and being able to affect them. Unlike the last one, which is being in the state of ritual purity, which is absolute. There's no waiving that. If a person ever finds themselves unable to make wudu for whatever reason, or tayammum at the same time, then for that person, the Mālikī school, the salat ceases to be fard. Whereas for the other ones, because there's flexibility in them, the salat is fard. If you cannot fulfill them, you just go ahead and pray anyway. He said, تَفْرِيعُ نَاسِهَا وَعَاجِزٍ كَثِيرٍ. And so the modality of not being able to remember is the person who forgets, and the modality of not being able to physically perform it is the person who finds themselves unable to fulfill those conditions. And this second hemistitch of the second line is basically a tafsir of the first hemistitch, and it's so that the line can be complete as well. ندبا يعيدان بوقت كالخطأ في قبلة لا عجزها أو الغطاء. And so he says, for these first three, which are what? Facing the Qiblah, and being free of najis in your person, clothing, place, and covering your awrah, covering your nakedness. If a person is unable to do them and they pray, then like a person who faced the wrong direction for the Qiblah, to a gross amount. All of them are recommended to repeat the prayer in its time. Now Akhdari mentions a qaida, which is that every time they mention that you should repeat the prayer in its time, you know that that's a recommendation. If the repetition is wajib, it's obligatory, that is a sign that the prayer is completely invalid, and that's not muqayyad, it's not like conditioned on being in one time or the other. That's mutlaq, that one, whenever you have, even if you remember after 100 years, you're still obliged to repeat it. So anything that they say, well, you should repeat the prayer in its time, the fact that they say that in its time, that means that the repetition of the prayer is recommended. It's not compulsory. Now, we continue with this discussion about the Qiblah. What is a gross deviation from the Qiblah versus a non-gross deviation from the Qiblah? The gross deviation from the Qiblah is man sharraqa aw gharrab. That if the Qiblah is to the east and you face to the west, or it's to the west and you face to the east, meaning no part of your face is facing the Qiblah, which is a deviation of 90 degrees on either side. If a person makes a mistake in the Qiblah, or somehow unable to face the Qiblah properly, and their inability or their mistake is less than within that 180 degree semicircle, less than 90 degrees off on one side or 90 degrees off than the other, then it's not even recommended that they repeat the prayer. But if their mistake or inability forced them to not have any part of their face facing the Qiblah, so it's over 90 degrees off on one side and over 90 degrees off from the other side, and they then recover the ability either by ascertaining or learning what the Qiblah is afterward, or physically being in a space where they can now face the Qiblah, if the prayer time is still in, then it's recommended for them to face the Qiblah. People should remember this, because not every day in life is a fun day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spare and protect every Muslim from harm. Ameen. But sometimes Allah Ta'ala chooses to test a person. بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات. Like Ustadji Maulana Hassan said, right? He told you're going to be tested. He told you exactly what the questions are, what the answers are to those questions, and what the reward is for the person who passes the test. So he's going to test you with what? With fear, some part of fear. So you're going to be afraid. You're not going to always be secure. You're going to have some days you're afraid, you don't know what's going to happen, and things could go very wrong. And hunger, you're not going to always have something to eat. Some of us, mashallah, that test has not been as frequent. Or perhaps maybe one of the tafasir that people haven't thought of, I'm not saying so because I'm not a mufassir, but maybe one of the tafasir of the test of ju' is the inability to like bear it and like just eat so much to the point where you kill yourself, which is, in that case, yeah, people are being tested the heck out of because they see Chick-fil-A and somehow they're like, idea of what fiqh is morphs into something unrecognizable or whatever. And deprivation. You'll be deprived of some part of your property, your lives. Some of you will lose your lives, and some of you will be deprived of the fruits from your agriculture and possibly investments. These are going to be the tests, the questions on the test. These are the ones that you have to have sabr through. So for that reason, we learn the fiqh of like what to do when that happens. If you're ever so sick that you can't get up and face the Qiblah, then just pray whatever way you're facing. If you're ever imprisoned, if justly, then make tawbah for your crimes and try to make restitution for them. If unjustly, which seems to be happening more and more every day, then know that it's not like whatever, like scumbag weasel, like, Nazi stormtrooper is like just following orders or whatever, right? That they're not the one who's arresting you. Allah Ta'ala is testing you. And don't feel bad about it. You're like, well, I have to say my prayers, I have to face a certain way, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do the other thing. No. Allah made your prayer fard on you, and He said if you're not able to pray like a particular way, then that's not even fard anymore on you. The fard is just to do what you want. Don't let it like kill you inside or eat you away that this person took away my deen. Nobody takes the deen away from anyone. Iblis is also an instrument of the Lord's will. Nobody has power over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Iblis himself knows it. What does he do when he's like cussed out and cast out? the first thing he does is he makes dua to Allāh Ta'ālā that give me respite until the day of judgment, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to misguide, these punks and this and blah, 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 paraphrasing here. And Allāh Ta'ālā, he makes dua to Allah because for two reasons. One, he knows that Allāh Ta'ālā is Allah and he answers people's prayers. The second thing is that he knows that there's really nobody else to ask. He's himself an instrument of the divine will. Whatever power he has is by Allah's leave, and so don't beat yourself up because Allah is using him to test you, and it's the same Allah on the other side of the test. So what do you do at that time? If they take your clothes away from you, God forbid, just pray however you are. If they take away your ability to move or face the Qiblah, if they take away your ability to sit or stand, then pray lying down or in whatever position you're in. If they take away your ability to ascertain what the time is, then just pray based on whatever your taqdeer is, your estimations are. Read like Mu'azzam Beg and what's his name, Mullah Abdus Salam Da'if, and these, they wrote travel logs about these things, that they were shackled and put in basically like caskets and taken to Guantanamo Bay, and and like when they would see, the guards would see people in shackles trying to pray, they would come and kick them and beat the crap out of them. As Americans, we'd like to pretend that Israelis are just, the only ones who do, but other people did this type of garbage as well. Some of them are, driving in the same street that we are right now, and we see them every day, and some of them actually regret it, and some of them feel bad about it, some of them don't. Everyone will feel bad about sin one day. Some people just have to wait till they get to the hellfire in order to do it, but Allah Ta'ala protect us all. The point is, these things happen. If the Prophet ﷺ was physically abused like this, and his companions were abused like this, and the Anbiya alayhimus salam were physically abused like this and killed like this, then stuff's going to happen. So when you're there, don't worry about it. If someone's going to beat the living smack out of you while you're trying to pray with with sajda and ruku and things like that, just pray with gesture. Do what you need to in order to do it. And if a person was ever in a situation where not only are they not given water for wudu, but there is nothing that they can validly make tayammum from, then that person should take solace that Allah Ta'ala has literally forgiven you from saying the prayer. If you want to take the rukhsah of another madhab and just say the prayer without your wudu or whatever, you can talk to a mufti of another madhab. In the Mālikī school, you're not even obliged to pray at all anyway. And Allah Ta'ala doesn't burden a soul more than it can bear. So don't let that feeling come in like, oh, some part of my deen was taken away. Your deen is what Allah said. Just like if you say, you make a sixth prayer up and just call it fard, that's a problem because you're not obeying Allah Ta'ala, then you're just doing what you want, right? So He took even the 5 daily prayers away from you. You don't have to pray them anymore. What skin is off your back? Don't worry about it. If you want to keep making the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala, you're always able to do so, and it's just nurun ala nur. Allah Ta'ala is giving you more and more reward. Easy to say when you're in bad situation, hard to do, but just the knowledge of it is at least the beginning of that road. So have that knowledge so that you don't get completely blindsided if Allah Ta'ala chooses to test you in one of these ways. May Allah Ta'ala spare every Muslim from all of these tests and give us afiyah. Ameen. So with the Qiblah, if mistakenly a person is within that really generous 180 degrees of the Qiblah, then 90 on each side, then they're not even recommended to repeat the prayer within time. If they made the mistake more than that, then they're recommended to repeat the prayer on time, except for if they were ajiz, if they completely had no way of being able to know what the Qiblah was, or ghita, like either because of they didn't have the information or instruments to be able to ascertain what the Qiblah was, or al-ghita, or they were like blindfolded or in like stuck in a place where they couldn't see outside, they couldn't see any of the signs. So if they lacked the knowledge to even be able to figure it out, or they lacked the physical means to even be able to figure it out, in that case, then you don't repeat the prayer one way or the other. The repetition is when you're able to figure it out and you just made a mistake, or you thought something was the Qiblah, but it turned out afterward it really wasn't. But you were able to do better, but you just kind of like you had a shortcoming. As an interesting side note and a plug for mathematics, mashallah, trigonometry was not discovered by the Greeks. They learned it from other ancient civilizations like the Persians and Egyptians. But Furthermore, people knew trigonometry. The name has, trigonometry implies that it's like the measure of triangles, but it's really not about triangles at all. Triangles are a manifestation of trigonometry, but it has to do with so much more than that. And the ratios in trigonometry between different shapes, the ratios, how like right triangles also have a certain type of relation to the ratios of things in circles. Really amazing. Just the fact that even exists is just so amazing, and that they're governed by like this number that they call it irrational, not irrational number, an irrational number, pi, but because it has no fraction, proper representation in fraction or in digit, as a ratio that governs like the relationship between them. The first people that were able to actually use this knowledge practically for cartography and navigation was the Muslims, and precisely because they were trying to figure out the Qiblah. And with that, I'll say one more thing, which is, yes, your prayers and your ibadat are never, they're never necessarily contingent on handasa, on specialized knowledge of, specialized technical knowledge of the sciences. That being said, there are certain groups in North America, some like slightly more respectable than others, some like markedly less respectable than others, but there are a couple of groups, they're all fringe groups, that have tried to argue that the Qiblah from North America is southeast. And one of the more unfortunate things is somehow or another the propaganda of that has spread around that this is like a Maliki opinion. You tell me, show me in the Mudawwana where it says that the Qiblah from America is southeast, or where it says from one of the four muhaqqiqeen that Khalil's opinion is based on, that it's southeast. No, rather this is an interpretation of the Maliki school by some people, and there are many Malikis that interpret it completely not like that. And the issue is this, is that if you go in a straight line facing southeast, walk on the surface of the earth in a straight line, you will go to South Africa, you will never make it to Arabia ever. This much is a complete fact. There are other non-technical ways of proving that the Qiblah is northeast from North America, but there is no non-technical way of proving that the Qiblah is southeast from North America at all. Technical or non-technical, there's no way of proving it either way. So you tell me, Allah Ta'ala gave everyone aql, you tell me what is a person supposed to do and what is not, and what they're not supposed to do. And then Allah gave everyone aql, some people love their aql, some people hate it. For those who hate their aql, you knock yourself out, you pray your salat in a gyroscope if it makes you feel better, and adopt any number of other weird opinions, and whenever someone quotes through a hadith, say stop acting like a Salafi, and whatever makes you happy, do what you're going to do, and then pay for, answer for it in front of Allah Ta'ala. I don't have the ability to physically force you to do anything. What I can tell you is that there are a number of pretty open and shut arguments, technical and non-technical, for the Northeast Qibla. There is zero way you will ever face southeast and make it to Makkah Mukarramah from any part of North America, and that's completely a fact. That's donezo. That's 100% open and shut. And why is it that people say it then, even despite that? It's because, I've seen it with my own eyes. Some people are flat earthers. No, the earth is not flat. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lam yamtahinna bima la ta'ya al-uqulu bihi hirsan alayna falam nartab wa lam nahimi. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never tried to tell us something that we had to believe that was incompatible with the aql, and this is also from his, or unable to be apprehended by the uqul, hirsan alayna, out of his guarding, being very avid for what's good for us, so that we never doubted, nor did we ever have spurious thoughts about reality. So the earth is not flat. I believe that, whatever, going to space and taking pictures of the earth from the sky or airplanes or whatever is a kafir conspiracy, then good for you, I've been on a plane. Maybe that was a kafir conspiracy too. Maybe there's just LCD screens in the window, and it's like there's just a mechanical thing in the plane like this, and then everybody around you switches up and it's like, let's pretend it's Makkah now. And I've never been to the actual Makkah Mukarramah, and maybe, I guess it's not aqlan muhal in the like philosophical sense, but that's not how things work in real life. And so for those of you who haven't used so much 5G that it causes you to get corona, inshallah, the Qiblah is the east of north, and Allah knows best. وَمَا عَدَى وَجْهَ وَكَفَّ حُرَّتِ anything other than the face and the hands of a free woman. يَجِبُ سَتْرُهُ كَمَا فِي الْعَوْرَةِ they have to be covered up in the salat, just like they have to be covered up because they're the nakedness of a woman in front of a non-mahram Muslim male. Now, this book is it's a primer in fiqh. It's definitely not a intermediate or advanced book. The aura of a man in front of another man is everything but everything between his navel and knees, and that's the aura of a man in front of a man, woman, in front of anyone. The nakedness of a man, and it's also the nakedness that he has to cover in the prayer for the prayer to be valid. There's more discussion than that. I mean, but at first pass, that's what that's what at first pass, that's what we're going to say. The nakedness of a woman in prayer is that she has to cover everything except for her hands and her face. But again, there are more details to that, just like there's more details to the nakedness of a man, because the exposure of all parts doesn't necessarily trigger the invalidation of the prayer. With regards to other people around, though, the nakedness of a Muslim woman in front of other Muslim women is like the nakedness of a man, everything that's between the navel and the knees. That's for a Muslim woman in front of other Muslim women, not in the prayer. For a Muslim woman who is in front of a non-Muslim woman, her nakedness is like her nakedness in the salat. She can only show her face and hands. She has to observe hijab. For a Muslim woman in front of a non-Muslim, non-mahram man, so a man who's neither her mahram nor a female, nor Muslim. In front of such a person, the Shuruhat al-Khalil say that the nakedness of such a woman is her entire body, meaning she has to cover her face and hands. So it's not only what they call niqab, but like more akin to what is a burqa, like you can't even show the eyes or anything. There are some people who are like really keen to show how like liberal and cool, like latte sipping neo-Andalus cosplayer while you pet your dog school, the Mālikī school is. And no, in America it means that women kind of have to cover everything when they go out. So that kind of is what it is. But at any rate, we're talking right now just about her aura in the salah, which is everything but the face and hands. It includes the feet. Unlike the Hanafi school, right? Hanafi school, if a woman shows her feet, it's not like makruh, is it? It's what? There's two opinions about it. Jazakallah khairan. But at any rate, a woman must cover her feet in the salat. In the Mālikī school, although if the bottoms of her feet show when she's making sajda, that's excused. But as long as they're covered from the top and from the sides, that's what's important. With not just regards to the feet, with regards to everything else. Even a man, if he has a izar on, he's covered from the top and from the sides. From the bottom, it might be that's forgiven. That's not considered here.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was outside salah or inside salah.
Oh, I see.
Inside or outside salah.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. So, ولكن لدى كشف لصدر أو شعر أو طرف تعيد في الوقت المقر عفوا. That if a woman, some part of her hair is shown or some part of her chest is shown, like from a low collar or open collar, or something from her side is shown, she is to repeat the prayer within its time, meaning it's not completely invalidated. This particular sharh that I shared with you, gentlemen, and he has a discussion about why that is. It's an interesting discussion. I'm not going to rehash it right now, but At any rate, both with a man and a woman, there's a awra that is ghalidha and a awra that's khafifa. The awra that's ghalidha is like your private parts, and like, you know, it's more for a woman than it is for a man because of her haya. But you know, even for what's between the navel and the knees, if some part of the thigh shows or whatever, it's still a sin to show it on purpose. A person still should repeat the prayer, but they don't have to, because the prayer is not technically invalid unless they actually show their private parts. And even then, it's invalid when they show their private parts if they're not able to cover it or they don't remember to cover it. I guess theoretically a person could be like, oh, I don't have any clothes on, I only remembered after the salat's over, and then it's recommended to repeat the prayer within the time or whatever, although that seems a bit far-fetched. But then again, mashallah, I know Hanafis and Shafi'is who like eat an entire meal and cook chai for themselves during Ramadan, and then they remember afterward. I'm sure some Mālikī does it, but like probably far less, just because the knowledge somewhere that you're going to have to make it up lurks in their head, so they're, you know. It's funny how human beings are, right? Funny. So that's what he's saying, is that showing the lesser parts of the awra don't necessitate the invalidation of the prayer. Rather, if they are shown, then the prayer should, if they're shown and they're able to not be shown, the prayer should be repeated within the daruri time. But it's not that indicates that it's not invalid, and it's not going to be invalid until a person purposely shows the awra ghalidha, the like more severe parts of the awra. وشرط وجوبها النقى من الدم بقصة أو الجفوف فاعلمي. That the shart of the condition of the obligation of the prayer on a woman is also purity from blood, meaning in particular the blood of menses, which can be of one of a couple of modalities. One is that whatever the vaginal excretion is, whether it is liquid or whether it's solid, that it's white. It's not yellow, it's not red, it's not brown, it's not turbid, but you know, it doesn't have to be like white as snow, but it should be like about the whitest it gets, that it's that white color. Or that there's dryness in the vagina without any discharge. So either of those are they show that a woman is not in menses. فَاعْلَمِي. So know these signs well. فَلَا قَضَى أَيَّامَهُ ثُمَّ دُخُولُ وَقْتٍ فَأَدِّهَا بِهِ حَتْمًا أَقُولُ. So a woman doesn't have to make up the prayers that she missed during her menses. And if she has her menses, for example, at the time, well, dhuhr is still in or whatever, she doesn't have to make up that dhuhr either. Theoretically speaking, if she didn't pray dhuhr and her menses started in ʿāshir, she doesn't have to make up either of them. And then on the flip side, however, if her menses end and she enters into purity at the time of ʿāshir, then she has to pray her dhuhr and her ʿāshir because the daruri time for dhuhr is still in. That's something, a discussion I think we had more within prayer times. So if a person wants to know more about how that works, they can go back to the prayer times. With that, are there any questions directly related to the lesson today? Barakallahu feekum wa sallallahu tabarak wa ta'ala wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum.